We've been experiencing a lot of power outages in Michigan, and it's due to these severe storms that are rolling through. Probably 6 or 7 power outages this summer alone. More storms rolling through today. I'm currently dragging out extension cords to power my refrigerator, my freezer, some lights in the house, make some coffee or whatever we need to do. And it's just gotten to be where I'm tired of it. There's no reason not to have a whole home plug. And today I am going to install that. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Dierdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's get started. So what we're going to need to install our whole home outlet is a box, an electrical box. I have my 3-prong plug, just the same that is it's a twist lock plug, 3-prong, the same thing that's in my generator, and some number 10 wire. I only needed 3 wire, but I couldn't find anywhere in the store in a small roll. This is probably way more than I need. I believe I'm going to make my cord out of this also. And I could only get 4 wire, but it doesn't matter. I just won't use one. So we're all set there. I've got the covers, I've got everything else, and I need to access this panel. We also have a 30 amp 2-pole breaker that we're going to be putting in here so that we feed both legs. I'll get into that more in just a little bit here. But the first thing I need to do is cut this drywall away so that we can access this breaker panel. Now that the drywall is all out of the way, I need to decide where I'm going to locate my box. And I believe that I would like to have it about at the same height as these light switches. And there's a 2x4 right here. So I'm going to clear the insulation out of the way and get this box mounted to the stud. If you would like to pick up an awesome shirt like this, a coffee cup, hats, we have all kinds of cool stuff. I'm going to put a link down in the description to my store. You can check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it if you did. Because my insulation is still pinned behind the drywall, I'm not cutting out. I'm going to take a razor knife and I'm just going to cut that. I'll still have paper to reattach it, so I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to cut it straight across here. Cut it right through. It'll tuck back in there real nice. And there we go. That's about all I need. My wires for my switch are right here in the wall. Let's get a closer look at that. These are the wires for my interior lights, my porch light outside the door, and then a spotlight above the garage. And as you can see, this is the nail stop. And this should be here. This is correct. This will prevent anyone from putting a screw or a nail through into this stud right here to penetrate these wires. I'm going to locate my outlet box just below those wires and pretty much in line with these switches over here. Everything will be just fine. I'm going to put it about right there. Before I install my outlet box, I'm going to remove this knockout and install my clamp connector for my NM cable. Once you tap it with the hammer a little bit, it'll knock in some. Then we can just reach in, grab it, and break it out. There we have it. The clamp has a nut on it that we secure inside. Then we'll just take a screwdriver on these edge right here, tap it with the hammer, and knock that tight. Making sure, of course, that our screws are facing forward so that we can get them tightened. The box has these little tabs right here that you just tap into place with your hammer, and it'll secure it on both ends while you put your nails or your screws in, or however you're going to attach it to the wall. Now we'll put a screw at the top, screw at the bottom, and we're done. I'm just going to use two 1 1/4 inch construction screws. Now I need to get the cover off of my breaker panel. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the knockout out of the breaker panel. There's plenty of knockouts in here. Just select the size that you need and get my clamp connector installed. With our clamp connectors installed, we're now ready to go ahead and install our NM wire. This is number 10. This is 4 wire, so I will have one extra. I want to feed it in here where I have plenty to spare. So I'm going to get about another 6 inches. It's always better to have a little too much, cut it off and throw it away, than not enough. Not enough's bad news. So after getting a good idea of what I need, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. I know that it's a little bit extra, but that's okay. I've tightened the screws on my cable clamps and secured my wire in place in both the breaker panel and the outlet box. I'm going to go ahead and get my insulation back in. And then for this piece, I'm just going to tuck it back behind the outlet box and put it back into place. With the insulation complete, we're going to go ahead and get this plug installed. Now that my clamps are tight, I'm going to go ahead and strip off this outer insulation using a razor knife. I'm just going to start down here low, don't press too hard, and just cut right through this insulation. Then we'll peel it away and then just trim it off down here where we started cutting it. I'm going to do the same thing here. Because I'll only be using 3 of these 4 wires, I'm going to omit this red one on both sides. Now I'm going to go ahead, these are a little bit too long. I'm just going to take a couple inches off of each of them, and the rest of that I will be able to push back into the box. I need to strip these off to 5/8 of an inch. Once I get them stripped off, we'll come take a look at them. Before I install this outlet, I just want to show the back of it here. So the outlet is designed for the wire to be wrapped around the screw if it is number 14 or smaller. If it is number 14 or larger, it needs to be inserted into the back side of this tab. We have the green for the ground or the bare copper. We have the gold for the hot or the black wire, and the silver for the common or the white wire. The receptacle wiring is complete. The white wire to the silver, the ground wire to the green, and the hot wire to the gold. Hot wires are always black. I'm going to use this cover panel right here, attach that on, and then we'll get that tucked back in the wall and get this attached, and that will be complete. What I want to talk about now is the breaker panel itself. This black wire right here is a hot wire coming from my house, supplied by a 50 amp breaker. It powers this lower breaker section. This is what they refer to as a leg. Each breaker panel has 2 legs. So it will have this 110 line coming in, this black one, and it'll have that red one right there coming in. That is also 110 volts. So when we're installing the plug for our backup generator, we need to make sure that we power both of those legs. My white wire and my ground will be going right here in the neutral strip or the ground strip. And I'm going to get them attached right now, and then we'll talk about the breaker some more. So I've attached my white wire and my ground wire to my ground strip right here in my breaker box. Now I just want to explain one thing real quick, because if this has ever happened to you, it may help you understand why. If you've had a power failure in your house where some things work and some things don't, it's because there's an issue at the pole where one of your legs of power have went down. Because this breaker operates off of one leg, this breaker operates off of another leg, and these two are operating off of the same leg. That way you are bringing in 2 large wires into your house that can feed everything. You're not just trying to pull from one large wire, per se that red one right there or that black one down there. So what we're going to do for the backup generator is we have to make sure that we supply power to both of those legs, this one and that one. And we're going to do that with this breaker. It clips onto both of those when you install it. However, it does not, even though it operates from one switch, it does not feed both legs. So we have to put a jumper wire in between them. I've taken a piece of the red wire that I cut off out of the 4 wires that I wasn't going to use, and what I'm going to do is attach that from this terminal to this terminal. So I'm going to get these loosened up. Maybe. The breaker has the same tabs that the outlet has, and what we want to do is slide the jumper wire in like this. Now one of these terminals I'm going to go ahead and tighten. It doesn't matter which one. The other terminal, I'm going to put the black wire from the plug into this terminal. All 3 wires are now installed on the breaker, and the breaker is ready to go in the box. The breaker just snaps into the box. So I'm going to rearrange this wire over this way a little bit, and I'm going to pull this one out some. And what you want to do is pop the bottom of the breaker latches onto this plastic bar right down here. So we're going to set that in place first. I'm going to go all the way over to this far side. So what we just saw was my generator hooked up with the main breaker to my garage turned off inside the house, and the generator was powering everything in my garage. It's just kind of a little test run to make sure everything was good. Before I actually have a power outage, you need it to power the house. It passed the test with flying colors. I just want to point out a couple of things right here in the breaker panel. So I've got my breaker back on in the house, and it's being powered by the main power line. This breaker has to remain off at all times until you have a power outage. That is the point in time that you can turn this breaker on, because with this jumper wire, in essence, I would be feeding the breaker 240 volts if I turned it on. If there is no power and I hook up my generator and I turn this breaker on, I'm feeding 110 to this leg and 110 to that leg, and that is my intended purpose. If you had a 4-prong outlet, mine is a 3. That's why I only needed the 3 wires. If you had 4 wires, what would happen is the red wire and the black wire would be attached to the breaker instead of the jumper wire that I have to complete the current to both legs. I made my cord out of the leftover wire. I had 15 feet of wire. I just bought 2 twist lock plugs. The instructions are pretty simple how to hook them up, and I tied it into my generator. Now, we have to talk about this cord for a minute because it's a dangerous cord and it has to be used correctly. First of all, I want to say that if you are uncomfortable doing any of this, call an electrician. You can get it done for under 500 bucks. You need to get a switch for your panel inside so that you have to turn your main breaker off to turn the breaker on to feed the accessory power to your house. That way you're not back feeding power through the line. You always have to have your main breaker turned off if you're back feeding power into your house through a generator type plug. If you do not, you will back feed the entire utility lines and you could electrocute a worker who is on there. They have cut off plates that bolt into your panel to make sure that this doesn't happen. You either need to purchase that kit or bring in an electrician that can install that for you. Also, the style plug I'm using has 2 male ends. These are referred to as dead man cords, because here's what can happen if you're not careful about what you're doing and you don't follow the correct procedures that you need to follow. You can touch these and get electrocuted if things aren't done correctly. For me, I attach this plug to the wall. I attach it to the generator. I start the generator, then I turn on my breaker to start back feeding power to the house. When power is restored, I come out here, I turn off my generator, I turn off this breaker with my main breaker still off, detach this cord, there is no power to it, and then I can turn my main breaker on. You have to always make sure your accessory generator breaker is turned off if main power is on. I took the other 2 knockouts out of my breaker panel and got my cover back on. So we're all square there. Everything's nice and tidy and done. I took the other 2 knockouts out of my breaker panel and got my cover back on. So we're all square there. Everything's nice and tidy and done. That's all we got for this time. And remember guys, always respect the power of your power tools. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos. They're going to pop up right there. And we'll see you soon.